And really setting the expectation is really important. When you have a rule in place that you can't drop out at age 16, then it sets the expectation that that's a possibility. So what we're trying to recenter the conversation around is higher expectations for students. And we believe the investment in students is going to be well spent. And the actual, it provides a catalyst and a challenge, because not only do we have an opportunity here, but we need to think about things differently. How can we make alternative pathways and things that are more relevant to students? So it will be not only a challenge, but also a catalyst for coming up with different ways. And as the students so eloquently talked about, they're the center of the universe. So we have to adjust our what we do around the students and around what will meet their needs. So we see it as a great opportunity and intend to bring a policy to the board, the first board meeting after it's possible to do that, which will be July 8th.
Thank you, Donna. And Amy, are you in favor of changing the age to 18? And why? You currently work with kids who are ready to drop out of school.
I am very much in favor of it. Every day that we can have these students in the classroom is another day that we have a chance of reaching, teaching, giving them the opportunity to be successful. So absolutely, I think it's a great idea. Yes, I do work with kids that ultimately would have decided to drop out. We had 32 students graduate this year, and every one of our students would have dropped out had they not been a student at our school. And I agree with Donna with being prepared. We have to be prepared when this comes through, because the alternative opportunities out there, getting our students ready with those 21st century skill sets is, I mean, it's inevitable. So we have to be ready when that comes about.
Dustin, where are you?
Hello? All right, I'm on now. It's a no-brainer because it's what's best for kids, and not just certain kids, but it's what's best for all kids. If I was to have been allowed to make some decisions at 16, that would have completely shaped my life. I would not be sitting here today. And that's essentially what we're allowing kids to do when their parents get in trouble for them not coming to school. And we held them accountable, and we put them in truancy court. What parents do then is take care of themselves a lot of times and allow their students to drop out. And that is not what's in the best interest of that kid long term. Immediately it keeps them out of jail. However, eventually, a lot of times through property poor decision making, that's where they end up eventually anyway. So again, to your first question, which was kind of before this started, I'm the principal of Phoenix Academy. We were previously named the Clark County Day Treatment Program. That doesn't sound nearly as sexy. So what we've tried to do is really put a positive spin on what is alternative education and not make it some kind of ugly word. And really that's coming from our students. It's our student school. They came up with the name. They presented it to the Board of Education. And as far as we're saying kids, there were 3 kids that graduated this year from my school that had dropped out. So forget are going to drop out. They had dropped out, but through relationship building with my staff, I was previously at the high school, so when a couple of guys found out I was a principal, they would beat me down the door. And that's not, directly on me, but it's how powerful the relationships that you develop with students can impact their life decision making. So, yes, I'm fair.
I think you are.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, Donna, what about some pushback that we hear from folks out there saying that if we raise the age from 16 to 18, kids are just going to sit there for 2 more years and cause trouble? What does Jefferson County, what will you have in place to deal with that, say that additional 2 years span?
Well, I was an high school principal for 12 years, so I agree with that. If you put kids in the same situation that they've been in, without a possibility to be successful, if you do more of the same, you will get exactly that. So really the challenge, and like I said, the opportunity is how do you do things differently for them and give them an alternative path or hope. I think what students need is a second chance and hope. And what that means is that for students that come from different circumstances, you may have to give them several layers of hope. When one thing doesn't work, you're gonna have to try something else. One of the things, and you have a flyer in front of you, that we have our 5-star design high schools, where you're really learning, and what you're learning in science and math is relevant to what you might want to have. So we have a Jamestown High School student who's been interning at EnthWorks and who will go in and have a job at EnthWorks, right in the Louisville community. So when you can actually see what your learning is related to and how that can lead to a job. In our career theme, where it's a medical theme, they're working with Norton Healthcare professionals, and they can see what's possible for them at Norton Healthcare. So again, it's showing students a path and a way and hope. The other thing that you know is that things happen. We've all had this dream, and I know you have. When you were in college, right? And you have this dream that you're in class and they give you a test, but you forgot to go. And remember the anxiety that you have and how your heart jumps. Think of what it is for a student who hasn't been in a class for a while or has gaps in their learning, and you put them in a situation where you say, just try. Well, you can't just try. So having been a high school principal, and my colleagues here will probably agree, what do you do to get out of that situation? You probably throw something, right? Or you say something, because you have to get out of a situation that is impossible to be successful in. So what we need to do is, as Stu is saying, not more of the same, not inserting kids and say, just try harder if it's impossible to be successful. Students are very smart. They know when it's possible to be successful, and they know when it's not. So we have to have alternative ways, and I think technology will help us because it can differentiate learning. So if a kid misses 2 days and comes in on the 3rd day, if you have a technological program along with great professionals that are giving encouragement, that program is ready for them when the kid is ready to learn. So it's going to take different ways, but connected to relevant job opportunities in the world. And in Jefferson County, I just sat through wonderful graduations, 22 graduations. I went to 7 personally. And as I saw the students walk across the stage, what a superintendent is thinking is certainly about celebrating with the families, but I'm thinking about who did we miss? Who isn't walking across the stage, whose family isn't celebrating, and where could we have reached the student? And sometimes kids don't drop out in high school. They physically leave in high school, but we've lost them way before that because they have gaps in learning that even with all the persistence in the world, they cannot overcome. So I think what's important is that we think differently and meet the student where they are and give them a pathway to be successful. So just inserting kids back into a structure that they weren't successful with, absolutely will probably be talking about, so we cannot do that.
So it can be, if we're not careful and we don't do the kinds of things that Donna is talking about, it can end up being counterproductive. So we need to really pay attention to that. And Amy, you said you guys graduated 32 kids this year, kids who would have dropped out. Can you kind of describe a typical day and maybe share some of those stories about them, not saying names, but share a little bit with us?
Well, if you drive into our parking lot, you would probably see quite a few kids out working in the Outdoor Learning Center. We have a garden outside. We have all kinds of opportunities for the kids to participate in the things that they want to do, not only hobby-wise, things that they're interested in, but career opportunities also. You can walk into the front of the building, see students teaching classes, students teaching us, giving tours of the building. We have 4 major project areas. One is the TLC Museum. One is the Outdoor Learning Center, as I mentioned. We have an International Bistro World Cafe program, and we also have our Innovations Lab. So we have students that come to us and say, we do not want to be labeled. I have not been a very good student growing up. I've got one particular student in mind that has told told us over and over again when he was younger that I was a real pain. I was a real pain, and I caused a lot of havoc in my school, but I want to change. And now is the time that I want to change, so please don't hold that against me. So when kids come into our school, it's a clean slate. As a matter of fact, our principal, Mr. Branchi, he doesn't even really tell us the background of a lot of the kids because he doesn't want to put that thought into our minds that this kid might act a certain way. So every student that walks into our building has a clean slate, and it's great because we do too. You know, I was probably one of those students, as Dustin was saying, that probably would have ended up at my school. So seeing the opportunities that these students have, I mean, and to watch them blossom and grow, and I know for a fact that they would probably be walking the streets right now, is fabulous. A few years ago, we had a student that walked to school in the rain one day, and when he got to school, he was drenched. He walked in, hadn't had any sleep, and we're like, what's going on, you know? There was suspicion that he was part of a gang, had a very dysfunctional family life also. He said I had to stay up all night. My mom was smoking in bed, she's an alcoholic, and I didn't want her to burn the house down because my little brother was in the next room. And to think about some of these kids and what they have to deal with on a day-to-day basis, and we want them to come to school and learn. You know, we want them to be successful, but as Dustin mentioned, the relationships is number one. You know, we build those relationships with the kids, and we let them know that they can trust us, we trust them, and we're gonna do whatever we gotta do to get them to that point that they can believe in themselves. So a typical day at TLC, it's going to be something that you've never seen before. It's kids teaching kids, kids teaching teachers, it's teachers taking kids out into the community to go to our local elementary schools, to mentor other students, be a part of Partners for Youth program in Lexington, go to the mayor's office to meet with him. It's just giving the students the opportunity to do the things that they've never been open to before. And that opens their minds to be able to learn.
It goes along with what Donna's saying, you just can't put them back in that situation and do the same exact thing. So Amy is saying, you're going to come to our schools, you're going to see some things we've never seen before. That's what has to happen, guys. We have to meet the kids at a place to where we can take them forward. It's so critical. Dustin, do you want to add to that?
Sure, absolutely. At the Phoenix Academy, one of the great things when you come in our building is you're going to be welcome. You're going to feel warmth. You're going to feel the vibe about the school. And we sell ourselves, and I sell my staff on, we have to do this from my administrative assistant answering the phone. She's got to be positive. We've had several conversations about that because when people call, they need to feel like I can talk at this school about anything. Because really, what we provide is a background service. And kind of three-pronged educationally, we're going to see project-based learning. We teach our entire common core curriculum in language arts through writing a newspaper. And the newspaper is completely student-driven. They pick out the articles, they take the pictures. We have a collaborative relationship with Winchester Sun. We write articles for the local paper. We interview constituents in the community to be published in the paper. So very hands-on learning. We have kind of a garden. I've been to TLC at Linlee, I know Mr. G, so there's going to be several similarities between our programs because they're doing rockstar work, and if you see rockstar work, you're going to steal it. And so that's what I've done in a lot of ways. As far as social emotionally, we do have 2 full-time therapists, counselors in our building. So we're going to treat not only academic deficits, but also emotional deficits. And it's a very big part of our program. We do a lot with employability. We have employability scores. So every student in our building, from the time they come into the building to the time they leave, are being evaluated on how employable they are. And our students develop those criteria. So it's not the teacher saying, hey, you're going to do this, this, and this. We ask our kids Same was being employable. They had employability week. We brought HR directors from our industrial park in. Basically said, what are you looking for with employees? And based on that, our kids developed a whole system. So we have very much student buy-in. And then the third thing is in the community, we will be very visible in the community. We have a chess team. We actually finished second in our local chess club, and we finished 33rd in the country in the national event in Nashville. And I say that because my kids are 100%. I mean, literally every kid in my school is free and reduced. 98% had never left Winchester, Kentucky. So going to downtown Nashville with me, man, that was a big time event. We played chess, and I get talking because I'm passionate, guys, and I apologize. Well, actually, I'm not. I'm very passionate about our kids. They do terrific things. And so we have made such a connection with our kids. We have a chess team. I have 30 kids in my building, typically. 12 of them compete on Saturday mornings at 9 o'clock with no transportation in chess tournaments. I don't need to say a whole lot more than that. I mean, they embody our program, our school, and it's really about setting the expectation. You will, I mean, it's not going to make you successful. You will be successful, period, when you walk into this building. And we sell that to the parents, we put things past behind them, and from the time that they walk in the door, they know Mr. Howard and his entire staff are going to make me successful. And I think really when you're looking at, looking at alternative programs, when you have to have highly effective teachers that love kids. For a long time, alternative schools, and I was going to say it, have been a dumping ground for ineffective teachers, period. Luckily, Dr. Elaine Ferris, our superintendent, she is very empowering for me, and she is very supportive of alternative education programs. And she allowed me to hire the best staff that I could hire. So it wasn't, here, you're going to take this person, they kind of struggle with this other person, who's got it on my back, so we're going to put them in your school. So it's going to take that kind of top down and then have leadership. I think any program is only as effective as the leader, and it's on what they said, and hopefully I'll continue to set it up.
Thank you. You can be as passionate as you want, for sure. One of the things right off the bat that I heard Dustin say was that the kids feel welcome. And you take that kid earlier that the student he was talking about and said, man, I was in pain. I created havoc in my school. Do you think he was welcome in the old school where he was? They saw him coming. They were like, oh my gosh, what are we going to do? So it is new hope. And they're welcome going into a new situation. It gives them hope and a fresh start. Great things that are happening. So let's get down a little bit to where the rubber hits the road. I'll ask all of you all this. And I heard you say, Dustin, that you have to hire teachers. You have to hire great teachers who are passionate about the work. And I've seen that happen at TLC also. But what about the cost-benefit portion of this? And I think it's maybe a dumb question, but what does it cost per student in an alternative program versus a regular program, and what do you see as the cost benefits? I'll open it up to all of you.
I can only speak for our program. Again, we're a Department of Juvenile Justice facility, so we do get some funding from DJJ. We also get some funding from CACSAC, which is a Kentucky Educational Cooperative for State Agency Children, because a lot of our children are in foster care or in the state or on probation with the Department of Juvenile Justice. So we do get some other funding. However, in our district, approximately per student, we spend about $6,500 for educating high school students. In my building, we're right around $9,000. So it is a little bit more expensive per child. However, would you pay $3,000 to ensure a student gets a high school diploma and is not on the streets, and you're worried about locking your door in your community so that they can feed the mouths that they have to feed? And really, for me, it's a no-brainer.
Maybe you know your numbers? Right off the top of your head? I do. Fayette County, I'm sorry, but I do remember those because I was there when we started that program. And the investment there right now for the regular ed program is more like $9,000 or $10,000 a student, so it's higher than Clark County, but in the alternative programs, it's about 20,000 per student. Because of the pupil-teacher ratio that's taking place. And we felt like every penny of that was well invested. And you asked the 32 parents of those 32 kids when they walked across the stage this year. You know, and I'm going to jump in here for 1 second if you don't mind, but going to those graduations, you know, as an educator for a long time, 8 years, I've never felt more appreciated than I felt at those graduations. Those kids appreciated getting a high school diploma more than anybody else. So I thought it was definitely worth it. But Donna?
Well, actually, there's a range in Jefferson County Public Schools. We have 155 schools, so it might range from $8,000 to as much as $16,000 per student. But I agree exactly what Stu's saying. It's equitable distribution of resources. It's according to needs. And one of the things I do want to give a shout out to Dr. Hensley about is the initiative called Louisville Linked. And Dustin mentioned it, is this idea to take all the resources that are in a community like Louisville and make sure that you're linking it to the needs of an individual student. So what we need to do is get more efficient and organized to make sure that we're meeting the needs of students using community resources. The other thing is examining every dollar, and I know in your districts as well as ours, that we spend. And is it really impacting students? Is it really helping to get somebody across the finish line and graduating? So that's another thing that I think we all have to do is look at, are we spending things that don't impact achievement? And one of the things that I think is great is the Districts of Innovation. And Jefferson County was fortunate to be awarded that last Wednesday. But that's going to give us a wonderful opportunity to design schools. And we're actually going to run a design contest with the community. And I've got a feeling the Pritchard committee might want to get involved in this.
Probably will.
Because the great thinking here is to say, if you could design a school around the needs of an individual kid, according to what they would absolutely know would work, what could that mean? So Louisville Linked is part of that. How do you link all the resources in the community and be more efficient with spending? And then there's also part of it called Opportune. Every kid needs somebody significant in their life that believes in them, that's going to stay with them. So Opportune is connecting a counselor, someone in the community, the parent and the student around the needs of the individual students. Because we had a similar experience. We did a superintendent summit where we had students who are at risk of dropping out come and talk to a group of people like you. And they told about first of all, they told about the expectations that are in their family. Everybody in my family dropped out at 16. My cousins dropped out at 16. So of course what's in the kid's head is, that's what we do. We drop out at 16. So what you have to do is connect students with different possibilities. And also shout out to 55K in Louisville is, you know, when I go to Atkinson Elementary, which Dewey Hensley was principal at Atkinson Elementary, these kindergartners were the class of 2025. Our rising kindergartners are the class of 2026. The principal shouts, when are you going to graduate college and career ready? And they'll shout out the year. Then there's something about a minute, and they'll say, we're 1 minute ready to be college and career ready. So it starts early childhood, it starts kindergarten. You've got to change what's in people's thinking about what's possible for them. So part of the Districts of Innovation for us will be connecting students with powerful influences that show that there's something possible. Yesterday I was at a Street Academy event where they were celebrating African American young men who have on Saturday been working in Street Academy. And present in the group was a man from Jackson, Mississippi, who actually was doing an internship in Louisville, and he attends Yale, and he wants to meet you, Mr. Jones. He said, I want to meet Mr. Jones. I said, I think that would be really possible. And he said, I would bring reduced lunch. I'm from Jackson, Mississippi. So he was able to tell this group of young African American his story about how if you learn to read and you study hard, you can go to Yale, and you can be interning somewhere. So I think what we're all talking about is you've got to make sure that there's somebody significant in your life, and lots of time that's the teacher and the principal who says, I see something possible for you that you don't see for yourself, which is the most powerful thing.
Very good. And Don, you got actually into my next question I was going to ask, and I'll ask both of you too. Are there other ideas out there that you can share in addition to the types of programs that you guys are doing right now? Because there are lots of schools across the state right now that can't afford to move. So are there other possibilities, other ways to go about this?
I think one thing we can do is partner with other schools. I know Dustin and I talk a lot about going out and reaching out to other schools to help promote different programs within the schools. We've started our own TLC at Paul Lawrence Dunbar in Fayette County. So just getting inside the schools to just spark some of those ideas. I know colleges and universities are starting to do that more and more for our new teachers that are coming out to be employed. And so I think that's one start we can do.
Yeah, I think that in Clark County, we've done a pretty outstanding job over the past 10 years or so with being innovative. I think we work with the University of Kentucky, a lot of their innovation ideas. We're part of that program there. Our high school has completely changed their schedule. We've got a brand new $50 million high school that we just built, and they are turning education up and down a little bit. So it's not just you go to 7 classes a day, every day, but they're basically making positive alternative education within the building. So you don't have to have a separate building, a separate program, almost like you would a magnet program. I mean, a lot of times we celebrate magnet programs and solar programs that meet the needs of gifted children. And it's my thinking that we can also do the same with being innovative, meeting the needs of students who may not learn like everyone else, maybe more kinesthetic in their approach, and setting those up within a building.
And there are some preventative kinds of things that we can be doing so we don't get to that point. I think the Superintendent program has really been successful in Bowling Green. Mike, you may want to even talk about some of what's happened with some of the disciplinary pieces they're doing that in elementary schools. It's a Stephen Covey program. What has happened with the discipline in those buildings?
The first year they implemented the Leader in Me program, which is based on Stephen Covey's 7 Habits of Highly Successful People. Really changes the culture of the whole school system, dealing with the intrinsic motivation of the students. The superintendent, Tim Burley, was talking to me. He said, my disciplinary problems in all of my elementary schools went virtually to 0. And this last year we did it in our first junior high school. The amazing thing about it is our business leaders saw this. And they saw the soft skills being developed in these students and their work ethic and everything like that. And they said, how do we get this in all our schools? So the partnership that's happened with our business community is that our Chamber of Commerce has started, actually hired somebody on staff to go out and raise money so that we can implement this through all of our schools. And so we have our first middle school this last year, had 256 referrals year prior. This year they were down to 50. And just the first year of implementation within the middle school. And so they want to continue to do this. But we have parents that come and say, what are you doing to my kids? Because now they want to do their homework first. Now if I say to them, you need to take the trash out, and they get done with their homework and they start to run out and play, they remember they run back and do the trash instead of forgetting. They're starting to do first things first, which is one of the principles. And it's changing their relationships at home, it's changing parents, it's changing the whole culture of the school system, and it's really incredible to see it happen.
And think about the kids going through those programs are not going to end up in the position, most of them are not going to end up in the position of dropping out of school. So we have to do some of the preventive things too. We're kind of running out of time. What recommendations would you have for school boards across the state as they consider this issue. Some have programs like you guys have, some don't. Some have the funding to do it, some don't. So I'll just open up and ask for your recommendations. Amy, you have the mic.
I would just say we have to make sure that we have all our ducks in a row. We look at what we want to accomplish, talk to the schools, talk to the students, meet the kids where they are, understand the needs of the students and what we need to do to change things in our schools, and to just be prepared. Because it is a beneficial thing. Waiting till a student's 18 years old is definitely a beneficial thing. Because like I said earlier, and every day that we can keep a student in school is another day that we have an opportunity to reach them in order to help them be successful, productive citizens in our communities.
Dustin?
Yeah, I would just say that it's the right thing to do for kids. So bottom line is what's best for the students of Kentucky. Now, how we get there, I think we have to be innovative. I think we have to use a systematic approach in schools. Glad you brought some of the information up. KCID, which is Kentucky Center for Instructional Discipline, they do a lot of work with positive behavior supports and interventions. And at GRC, Georgia Clark High School, we were able to, again, put systematic programs in place so that instead of having 120 kids that are at risk, if you're tighter and more consistent in the entire building, now you only have to deal with 15 kids that are at risk. And so I think that through programming like that and being thoughtful and creative and not thinking about education as an industrialized system, right? Like you run people through it, you kind of build a robot, build a car. I mean, that's how we've done public education since its creation, its inception. And we treat our children like they are products off of a factory line. And we cannot continue to do that to be successful.
Donna, we'll give you the last word on it. We'll open it up for questions from our group.
Well, obviously, a very strong policy that's explicit and clear. I mean, boards set expectations and then to hold us accountable for that. And certainly to monitor how many students are being successful. And then when you try something that doesn't work, there's nothing wrong with trying something that doesn't work, but then what do you try that does work? So I think you have to be continuously improving. If it's not working, you're not getting the result that you want. And then we talked about it as distribution of resources, is to make sure that the resources are going to be able to support that innovative strategy or what needs to happen for the students. So, and actually every student, and Amy's talking about it, is a life and a heartbeat. So we had in 11-12, 533 students who dropped out, and 121 of those got GPDs. So when you think of it that way, each one is a face, and there's an opportunity. So I think boards do a lot when they hold us accountable and monitor our success.
Okay, let's open it up for questions. Yes, ma'am? You got a mic coming right there.
I don't think any of us would disagree with anything any of you have said about these kids and would enthusiastically support everything you're doing, your separate schools. However, when this influx of kids hits your few schools with up to $20,000 apiece to educate them, it's going to be a lot more kids. So that brings groups like the Pritchard Committee back to this funding issue, which is also related to tax reform. So somebody's going to have to get out here front with a drum with this new law. That it's sort of like, okay, show me the money. We've now put this 18-year-old back in high school and 17-year-old back in high school. So,
Yeah, and that was part of the premise of the law, was to make sure that districts had the funding to be able to do it.
and they don't.
Once it gets to, right now, they don't. So if it gets to 55%, they have 4 years to figure out what to do from there. So I think that part of the whole issue that we're in, and I said we're in a crisis earlier, This is a part of it, guys. It's a part of it. It's the right thing to do, but it's not free. It's important for us to get out there and keep that drop.
It's also a change in the whole education, how things are done in the schools. So if we can keep the kids in the schools and not want them, they don't want to drop out, then that's just kids that are in our schools. So if we can change the things, utilize all the programs that we've talked about today, incorporate the community more and more into our schools to be an equal partnership, I don't think the influx is going to be as huge as what we think. And like I said, if we can start changing some things within the schools, because it's different. Education's different now. It's a whole lot different than it was, even 10, 15 years ago. And our society. So we have to meet those needs. So that's a change in the way we do things also.
Stu, I have just 2 quick comments. One, if you put more money in early childhood education and close the gap sooner,
Right.
you won't have the need for alternative schools. And secondly, I think we're comparing it incorrectly. The question was asked, how much do alternative programs cost compared to regular ed? How much do alternative programs cost in comparison to incarceration?
Exactly. That is right.
Good point, Harvey. That's right on target. Yes. Corey?
Hi. My goodness. It's the loudest that I've ever been in my life. I live in a really small community, and every day I drive past our alternative school, and I see the kids walking into school and walking out of school. And I worry. I don't know what their day is like. I don't know if it's an effective program. Just as a member of the community, as a parent, what kinds of questions can I ask just to try to get at whether the students are being lost out of
Go in and visit. Walk in. Any school that is moving forward, which I hope most are going to welcome you in and show you what's going on. I know Dustin, he mentioned that kids are going to welcome you in, and it's the same at TLC. Take a look around. You're a member of the community. If you have children that could possibly go to that school, you have a right to ask questions. So.
Yeah, I think that she's right. I think specific questions to ask about their programming, their curriculum. I think one of the unfortunate misperceptions is if you're educating a student in alternative school, you're not teaching the core content. And at least in our case, in Clark County, that is absolutely not the case. Now, you're not teaching it with the same methods and modes, but you're still teaching the core content. You may not be assessing it directly with 150 question test, but maybe you're assessing it through a project or some sort of product that still demonstrates mastery. And that's really kind of the question, how do you know your students are getting the content? And like I said, we love any of you guys are more than welcome to come visit what we're doing. I think it's important. I think our mayor comes in and plays chess or chessing. One of our players would have been the checkmate 4 moves on the time. Very embarrassed. I'm not going to give you his name. I'll put that
Another question, Patricia?
Yeah. Yes, I was wondering if any of the 3 panelists had ever practiced in a community or a county where your school district was 1,800 people or fewer. Like a true rural Kentucky county where in Kentucky we have probably 80% of the counties, or what I would say is totally rural. We have no vocational school. We have 40% of the children in our school district have access to the internet. Only that 60% do not have access to the internet away from campus, and they do not have access to Facebook, Twitter, any of that stuff. I guess anywhere unless they go maybe to the public library. But I guess my concern is when we graduate pretty well, but I'm concerned about the options that these children have. We don't have an outdoor learning center in Trigg County is at the back of the patch. And we do not have all the wonderful things like Elkhorn crossings, The closest vocational school is in the county next to us, which, well, Christian and Caldwell County have vocational schools. That's it. And our Harbor Academy is what we call it, is in the back corner of the administrative building across the street from our campus, which is K through 12 on one campus.
Dustin, are you going to respond to that?
Sure. I'm originally from Graham County, Kentucky, which is northeast Kentucky. My dad, both of them, they're farmers, like the other side of preachers. I was the first person in my entire family either side to attend college, much less graduate from college. My little town's called Graceland, about 2,000 people, and our alternative school there is in the administrative office. So I recognize that there are challenges, but anything great, anything out there worth achieving is going to have its challenges. Do you let the process stop or not begin just because you don't have all the answers? And in Clark County, we had like a 10% dropout rate when I started. Right now, we're less than 1% because we put a lot of the interventions, positive behavior supports in place to keep kids there. When we looked at, for our county, whether it was the right decision, again, superintendent, myself, our high school principal looked at how many kids are actually dropping out between the ages of 16 and 18. And as of this year, we only had 3. So if those 3 end up at my school, I absolutely think it's worth it. Now, if you, and Donna said it, what this law, what I think will do is hold our public school system accountable to educate every child until they're 18 years old, and not just let them go out the door. Not that we're intentionally trying to do anything wrong. I'm not putting public education on blast, so please don't misunderstand me. However, if you put something in place that you have to do it, we have to figure out how to do it. And I'm excited about the challenge and opportunity.
Yes, go ahead.
So Dustin set this question up perfectly. I'm going to come at it from the other side of the spectrum and ask how in Jefferson County we can bring the issues of the alternative schools alive in a way that turns the students into something other than numbers. I think Dustin and Amy also spoke very eloquently about in the student as an individual and the particular things that individual adults can do. And, Donna has too, we get it. But as a board member, I'm trying to figure out how to ask for review of what's going on in the alternative schools without just piling on, and without just demanding a whole bunch of data that has the effect of objectifying people in the chain.
Well, and actually, we have several alternative schools, and I think it is, the data is there, and there certainly is data that we have about each individual school, so that's easy really to provide. But I think what it is about, and Amy and Dustin have talked about it, is at the individual child level, what is successful. So I think we also have to, and I love what they said about, you want a clean slate, you want an opportunity, you don't want baggage, you don't want it to be a negative. I mean, we really, as a community, should be celebrating the children who are successful from our alternative schools in the same light that we're celebrating any other child because they've come that way. So I think we have to do a better job of maybe telling the story. But the data is actually easy to come up with. So I think it's asking the same question about any school. And Amy said it really well too, it's a school and the worth of the kid is the same as anybody else. So it really isn't any different when you think about it. The life of that child versus somebody that graduates from a manual is the same attention and value. So celebrating, and I'm a student, if you've ever been to an alternative school graduation, that is one part, that is a party. And the kids are celebrating, but we as a community need to celebrate that too, because each child is worth celebrating. So, but in terms of, I think the data is there for every individual school. So I think we have to tell the story more on the success.
And I think in Clark County, what we did was very helpful as far as the public perception, is I actually report to the board. So I go to the board meetings and present our data to the board and to the public. And so there's no question in, what are our ACT scores, what are, now that can be dangerous sometimes because you're dealing with students that are behind. However, I think the most dangerous thing is not knowing, because then people presume that somehow you're getting an inferior education. And so that's been, again, for our district, has been very helpful. So I go to all the principal meetings. I know some districts, alternative school directors, or principals, they don't get included into the administrative bar. And I've been very thankful that our board superintendent have let us, we're a school, our kids are students. And so they treat us that way.
I'll go back to Amy for a second and relate this back to David's question. So you graduated 32 kids this year. Where are they going? What are they going to do?
Well, we have several that have applied for college. We have, I don't have the exact number right in front of me, but we have kids who are already working. So a lot of them are already on co-op, so they have jobs. They may not be interested in college right now, but they're working, they're being productive, they're helping their families. We have kids that have applied for BCTC, we have kids that are at Moorhead. We have a student who applied for UK. Last year we had a student who actually received a full ride to UK. We have a student who has applied to Transy and was accepted. So
Those are the numbers I want to see. Okay, we're going to invest in these programs. What are the results? And because Dustin's right, sometimes there's a perception that we're just going to run them through. And that's not the case, and I think it can't be the case. And if we're going to be having a good investment, when we see kids going on to the community colleges, on four-year colleges, transitioning into the workforce, going into the military, those are the numbers. I know at the TLC graduations, they announce for every kid that comes across the stage what they're going to do. And I remember sitting there and saying, oh, this kid's going on to college. And that's what we want. So that proof to me is what happens. You're going to say something else, Andy. Go ahead.
well, not to mention our attendance rate. We're talking about kids that didn't go to school. Either they were truant or when they were there it wasn't productive. We have a 92% attendance rate, daily attendance rate, and I'm sure Dustin's is high compared to what his kids were producing, when they were in their other schools. So the kids want to be there, they want to be successful. We have to go into that knowing students just don't automatically want to fail. They want to be successful. Sometimes they just don't know how. I had one of our counselors said, well, sometimes we just got to put that carrot in front of them. I said, what if they don't know how to get to the carrot? We have to teach them. Every opportunity is a teachable opportunity. A negative comment is a teachable opportunity on how you can be employable, how you can treat each other with respect, and those types of things. I just want to thank Stu, because had Stu not supported us, TLC wouldn't be where they are today. And of course, with the additional support that we get from Fayette County Board of Education. But thank you for that. I appreciate it.
Other questions? Yes.
I think that the work that you all do with students who have already dropped out or are at high risk for dropping out is excellent and definitely needed. But what I'm interested in learning about is what can we do system-wide to help make the impact of this law work for every student. And this kind of gets to what Harvey was commenting on, and it relates to meeting every child where they are at the time they're there, regardless of whether they're at risk or already dropped out or gifted. It shouldn't matter. So what is it that you do with hiring the best teachers, having project-based learning, allocating your resources when they're great or small? What is it that you do that you can share with all of the teachers, with all of the districts, so that every child is getting this quality of education? Because as we heard from some of our students this morning, even students who are skewed high, that's our phrase for the weekend, they have had their challenges. And luckily, they have a parent or program to help them through that, but a lot of kids don't. So what is it that you all do that can be shared, that districts can use their resources, that we can push for as a committee to help what you do be available for all the kids?
Sure. I think, and this is something, again, our district going from 10% to less than 1, but we're starting to use some of those things, and a big part of it, and it's expanding even more, is a mentoring program. And essentially what happens is every kid at our high school, not only in our alternative school, but at our high school, is connected to a mentor. And it's not just teaching staff, it's editorial staff, principals, custodial staff, the cafeteria staff has a mentor. So every adult in our building, at the high school, and our high school has 1,700 students. So you're not talking necessarily, you talk about a big event. And what we've had to do is build our schedule around doing it. We're doing it once every 2 weeks. The other thing we've been able to do is get our community involved. And our community actually comes in and has mentoring groups, not as often. But I think, and I think the thing that we're all saying is kids have to know you care before they want to do anything else. And they have to have one person. I read a lot of research articles. And all of them point to, if a student has one person in a building that they connect with, they are 5 times more likely to be successful. Just one. Doesn't have to be a teacher. Doesn't have to be a principal. One person. And so I think fundamentally we've got to meet the social emotional needs of all kids, make them want to come to school. Our attendance rate is 90% right now. Our high school is 92. Our kids want to come to school. And I think that with mentoring programs, I think with soft skill classes built into as almost a character ed, you can do that at a big high school. You can build that into your schedule. At the same time, you can teach high expectations in academics, meeting Common Core standards as well. But you have to believe, you have to have the leadership in your ability to sell it, to build capacity of all your teachers, because there'll be naysayers. GRC, there are people that think we are out of our minds in our county. Mentoring? What? Mentoring? But you have to be vigilant and loud on the other end, and coach them up or coach them out. That's kind of what our superintendent says. Because we have to have people in our building that care and educate kids.
Actually, as I'm sitting here, I'm thinking, I don't like the word alternative school, because I think what we're saying is a school is a school, and I know Dr. Hensley has met with our alternative school principals, and the expectation is that we will teach the Common Core, and the expectations will be the same. And the Kentucky Professional Growth and Effectiveness System, the teachers will be held to the same standards of that effectiveness system. So, and I think we all think of a word where there are alternatives and alternative strategies within every school to meet the needs of kids. So there's differentiation within every school, so that you're not having a school that kids don't fit in. Shouldn't every kid fit in every school, because we're adjusting around the needs of the kids. So I'm not liking the term alternative school anymore, because this is a real teacher who I'm sure is excellent, and this is a real principal who I'm sure is excellent. So I don't think we should categorize schools or kids, because they all deserve our best thinking. So I think we should abandon them.
Going back to the question, you're really innovation schools, aren't they? Because we're doing different things with kids who didn't fit into those rows in the regular classrooms. So we're being innovative in how we're approaching the kids. And so there are lessons to be learned, like the mentoring programs. Mentoring programs work for any kid. They really do. The other piece of it is, though, if you go into Allie Crowley's class, and you're a little bit motivated, you're going to get a great math education. I promise you that. I've been in there. Now, but if I take that same kid who went over to the Phoenix school and send him or her back to Allie's class, they may not. They may be very successful in that different environment, in that innovative environment. They can't fit into that other structure. So it's really, I like it too, Donna. I don't like alternative schools. I like innovation schools, because that's really what it is. Somebody else had a question. You guys have some great questions. Cindy?
Just coming from a point that I have mentored kids that probably would have dropped out if mentoring them. But the reality is that once I did mentor them, then they did fit in those seats in those regular schools. So I want to challenge the thought that all of these kids can't make it in the traditional school setting. They just need adults that can help get them past the obstacles that they run up against all the time. And the earlier you can start with them, the obstacles are a lot smaller than if you were to start with them at the high school level. So that the mentoring piece, and those in the room that know me know that I'm just obnoxious about the fact that that is the key, that every kid has to have an adult to help them get past those obstacles. And the obstacles are different, and that's where the variety comes in, that it's harder to address in the regular setting. But I really challenge the idea, as my 10th kid moved into UK today, that they can't fit into the regular mold.
Did you say UK or U of L? Just she's a big U of L fan, so. No, you're right. Mentoring is extremely powerful. I recommend a book to anybody in this room as you're thinking about the struggles that kids face every day. It's called Breaking Night. It's about the young lady who was in the movie Homeless to Harvard. I don't know if you saw that. It's one of the most powerful stories that you ever read about in terms of the struggle that a kid faces versus the success story on the other end of it. When push those right buttons, guys, the kids are successful. Yes? Dewey? This is the Dewey that Donna's been talking about.
Hey, everybody. One of our real challenges in all schools, but particularly in what we call success pathways, when our alternative schools are starting to talk about success pathway schools, is our ability to create a sense of belonging in those schools for kids. And what I hear Amy and Dustin doing is create a sense of belonging. You belong in a place where you have high expectations, where people expect something out of you. We've had it backwards for a long time. I mean, we've often thought that you achieve and then you get to belong. You know, if you're the captain of the basketball team, or if you're the head of the mega club, or the president of the science club, your picture's on the wall. And what alternative schools that are really good ones do so well is they flip that upside down. In Maslow's hierarchy, belonging comes before achievement. If you want to see achievement, create the sense of belonging first. And that's what powerful schools are able to do, whether they're alternative or success pathway or anything. You make kids feel relevant. You connect them to something real that matters to them. And that's how we want to keep those 16-year-olds to be successful 17-year-olds and successful 18-year-olds is by changing what we do to connect them very intentionally to things that matter, something that's real. And Stu's, the reason I decided to speak with Stu's discussion with Liz Murray in Breaking Night, I actually brought her to Atkinson when I was principal there and gave her a chance to talk to my students and to be in our classrooms and tell her story to our kids. And it's so powerful. She walked into a school, she was a 16 or 17-year-old freshman. She finally got into this charter school in New York. She had been riding the bus, had a piece of pizza, or she had $1.50 in her hand, had to decide if she was going to take the bus to this last school or get a piece of pizza. She thought about it, decided to take that bus to the last school. She walked in and the principal looked at her and she told her story really quickly. She was homeless. And the principal said to her, "Wow, you're going to have to really work hard to catch up." And she said, "Okay." And when he raised that expectation, he made it right for her. She graduated, made it into Harvard, is a nationally known speaker now, an author, and just an incredible person. And making that one decision, so people like Amy and Dustin, when they help that student, and they make that right moment, that key moment, that pizza versus the bus moment, that means